We're here at the Executive Leadership Training Seminars in Seaside, Oregon, and I have the privilege of visiting with Bob Day. Bob's captain with the Portland Police Bureau. Just finished a real challenging and meaningful presentation to everybody here. And we want to talk a little bit about what you had to share. In kind of the initial talks we had about you coming to present here, we just had coffee together, and the more I heard your story, in particular, kind of the long journey that continues, but where your son Sam died at the same time, in that same period of time, you suffered kind of a demotion that really had nothing to do with your performance at all, and it wasn't really made right till later, and maybe hasn't been made right at all. But at the time, I was so impressed with the fact that you were leaning into a journey that was really hard, and that not many people they haven't had those journeys. And I mentioned that, you see a lot of people get knocked down, and then when you see somebody get back up after a very painful time, you wonder why and how did that happen. And you were gracious to do some hard work, I think, to put together a presentation that had to be painful at times, and I'm interested in that. I mean, what was the process like for you to take some deeply personal, painful things and the learning that you were doing and bring them here, stand in front of 150 of your peers and talk about that?
Well, first of all, I'm just grateful that you'd asked me to be a part of it. There's a selfishness that I get to talk about my son, which I love. So even though it's extremely difficult, I'm just really grateful for that opportunity because it keeps his legacy alive, it keeps us engaged, and it's a great memory. I did have to reflect, pretty difficult at times, and for a couple reasons. One, I wanted this to be more than just a sad story. The loss of a child is so significant and so personal. I know there's people in the room who have probably experienced the same thing. Reassignment or demotion at work is not uncommon, and I know there's people in the room that have experienced that. Yeah. So I wanted to be sensitive to the fact that my story is not necessarily unique, although the compressed manner in which all those events took place sort of set it apart a little bit. So as I went through this process, I recognized, one, it's a chance to talk about Sam. Two, it's part of being able to grieve. In part of my presentation, I talk about grieving and the importance of grieving, and I think that this is part of it. I'd call it intentional grief, stepping in and working through this. But also, most important to me was that my peers and friends and people in the room would walk away with something applicable. That it would be something that they could point to and say, yeah, this is important, this is relevant, even if I haven't lost a child, even if I've had great success in my career, never experienced demotion or reassignment, that there's an applicability, either currently or maybe preparing them for the future, because life is hard, and I don't believe any of us get out, unscathed and unchallenged. And so I think these lessons learned are important to me, that it would create an attitude of hopefulness to navigate some of those other, maybe bigger obstacles.
Boy, and it certainly did that today. In this decision to come and present, it wasn't just your decision.
Right.
One of the things that I'm impressed with is you and your wife, Lorna, you've had to walk this path together.
Right.
And I think you talked to her first. And
right.
Tell us about that.
Well, we lived publicly through Sam's sickness, and we had a Caring Bridge site, and a lot of community, and a lot of friends, and people were aware of our journey, and so that is not too unusual. But now that he's gone, we're very protective of his legacy and wanting to honor that and be respectful. And I don't like to say that there's been a gift given, because it's such a horrific loss and so much pain, but we see this time now after Sam as a gift, as an opportunity. And I so much respect her and her commitment to Sam, to our family, to me. And, you know, we've said, I mean, we want to do this together, right? We want to go on together. We want to continue to live in honor of him and in honor of Natalie, our daughter, who, you know, continues to thrive at college. So I think, you know, us sitting down and me telling her, hey, you know, this is something I'd like to do and share and be a part of, she really guided me. I mean, I was on the phone with her last night, not just because I'm out of town, but I was actually like, so what about this and what about this? And she has done some public speaking. She actually sent me her manuscript from another presentation she did at a cancer awareness conversation, you know, and you know, to get some ideas. So we do this together in our own ways, but really with the same emphasis and the same desire to, you know, to encourage, to support, to recognize Sam, and, you know, to hopefully bring some, you know, healing and opportunity for ourselves, but also for others.
And in a room like the room today, or for those who were not able to make the conference, that are dealing with their own, you know, unique personal pain, and you made it clear, grieving, for instance, is an individual thing, and people do it differently. People also have different kinds of pain and tragedy they're dealing with. Some of them are public, like yours was, that has its own challenges. Some of them are deeply private, and they're sometimes embarrassing, and sometimes they're tragic in real unique ways. You talked a little bit about, as I thought, something positive to give people. You talked about hope and the importance of hope, and in particular, you talked about how hope and optimism are different things. Tell us a little bit more about that. I thought that was profound.
Well, I, first of all, don't consider myself an overly optimistic person. I tend to be, you know, if there's a suggestion or an opportunity, I tend to find ways to avoid it or challenge it, or at least recognize the holes in it, and can kind of be a wet blanket. So when you're dealing, though, with something as significant as childhood cancer, you know, you have a responsibility. We believe we have a responsibility to be hopeful. And what we learned over time was hope is not optimism. In other words, you know, it's not just a feel good, everything's going to work out kind of feeling. Hope is actually, in our way of thinking, it's a verb. It's active. You have to search for it. You have to go out and develop it. You have to create it. You can't just sit around and be hopeful. Really, you know, we were constantly researching, and I say we, that's a little bit generous. Lorna was constantly researching and seeking options and seeking opportunities and challenging doctors, and, you know, as we would go forward, because we wanted to be hopeful. Not that we understood that Sam's prognosis was very poor. We understood that his likelihood of survival was very low, but we have no regret living with hope. Because that brought us so much other opportunities, you know, and it brought us joy. Not happiness, you know, that's another piece that could be flushed out even more. It's not, there's a difference between joy and happiness, and we experience joy because of our hope. Doesn't mean we were always happy, but it allowed us to live well and allowed us to march forth, and it has continued to allow us to do those things.
Yeah, and that was, I think, the key part of the whole definition or difference between hope and optimism is it seems like hope involves movement.
Right.
You're acting.
Right.
That's part of the hope and
Right.
the hopeful journey.
Right.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and Lorna embracing the opportunity to, you know, actually to take a challenging, painful part of your life and making it honoring Sam's memory by continuing to give back the lessons you've learned. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And to all of you that missed the opportunity to hear Bob, I hope we'll get more opportunities to hear his story because it's profound. Thank you so much.
Thank you.